Okay, so I just mentioned a kind of three ideological critiques of capitalism, right? Of of free market um, arrangements, socialism, communism, anarchism, and now we're going back to some of the different elements of capitalism, and here in this section, we see some things that we just kind of take for granted, which is the idea of having a department store, and many of the ways in which we shop. Going to a Target, a Walmart, or to a mall. These are things that are really going to emerge out of this time period. Now, I think what we should take note of, which is very fascinating, on page 478, when it talks about the art of selling, it says, to promote consumption, businesses developed sophisticated advertising techniques and marketing strategies. Many hired psychologists and other experts to develop advertising campaigns that appeal to both consumers' fears and their desires. And so if you read that whole chapter, it's very interesting. This idea about making you feel bad if you maybe smell or don't brush your teeth enough, and why this product will make sure that nobody looks down on you. Many people, I remember when I had a philosophy class years ago, my professor was talking about that there are studies that a lot of people will proclaim that they're not affected by commercials. But the studies show over and over again that they are, and there is so much money put into advertising departments that, these companies feel that they can put lots of money into people who can brainstorm, even psychologists, over the best methods to seduce us into buying products. I may show you later a documentary that deals with a time period a little bit later with Sigmund Freud's nephew in America named Bernays. Sigmund Freud was the one who came up with psychoanalysis, but his nephew studied these psychoanalytical concepts which he wanted to apply to advertising. And some of you may have already heard this, and we may again talk about it in more detail later on. It was considered unfashionable and maybe even inappropriate for a woman to smoke cigarettes. So there was a kind of feminist rally, a rally that were, I believe that women were fighting for the right to vote, something like that. And he staged having women put cigarettes underneath their skirts, their garter belts or something like that. And then the women, and he had them paid to do this, of course, then pull out their cigarettes and light them up in the middle of this rally. And then has an article written called Torches of Freedom, where women were then showing that they could smoke cigarettes like men. And what this was an aid to the cigarette industry that he was being paid for, to make one half of the population that the market couldn't tap into, to now make it fashionable for women to be able to smoke cigarettes. And in fact, it worked. It's mind-blowing, actually. And so, you don't want to get conspiratorial all the time. But sometimes you read this stuff and you just think, oh my goodness, this really, we are like just being controlled by puppet masters or something, right? Now, look, just to quickly qualify on that, conspiracy theories, where they break down and where I distance myself from them, is when they don't have something tangible to work with. The case that I'm mentioning, actually, we have documentation and cases to pin down. So a conspiracy that we can discover to be true. Okay. Now, just moving on. I don't want to go too much on this stuff. I think you understand the significance of shopping malls and department stores like we have, and some of the names you'll recognize that are common still. Chains and so forth. So I'm just going to move on from that. And it mentions what here in the PowerPoint, why did advertising become so important? Well, of course we saw it because it works, and you and I are buying into it. So that's just a fact. By the way, just as a side note, I noticed when I took my daughter shopping at like Safeway, or I hate to even like mention names, but a mainstream department store, and she was watching also, well, I'll just say Disney Channel. At the time when she was younger, there was Hannah Montana, and there was all these different things. And then I'd go to the grocery store, and Hannah Montana would be on cereal boxes or anything, and my daughter just automatically grabbed it off the shelves and would put it into the cart, and then of course throw a fit if I didn't buy it for her. And I didn't always buy it for her, but sometimes I did, and I was annoyed, right? So then I started going to alternative grocery stores that didn't have, that were more like organic food, kind of like rich, hippie stuff places. And those advertisements weren't on any of the stuff, and my daughter was just bored and wanted to hurry up and get out of there. I could just grab almost anything and have no fits being thrown by my daughter. And I thought, oh man, they're so brilliant, right? To utilize TV shows that our kids watch and then just simply slap on an advertisement of one of those faces on any given product, and your kid's going to grab it at the very least, or draw attention to it, or throw a fit about it. It's amazing. Okay, anyways, that's out of your way. All right. So, I kind of want to just move on from that. I mean, here I feel like this part we get it. Not really new news for us. Okay. But I just want to kind of briefly say this: that when we talk about advertising, promoting, and development of a national consumer culture, there is something kind of interesting about this, right? Coca-Cola, Ronald McDonald's, the Golden Arches. You'll notice that like a McDonald's commercial you can literally just have a commercial where the Golden Arches come and they say, "I'm loving it." And they don't even show a hamburger or fries. And they remind you, hey, why don't you go get, a Big Mac? It's like, because they've become such a part of our culture that you identify almost as being an American. I mean, we Americans, what do we have to claim as a cultural icon? The Scandinavians have Vikings, and we have Nike and McDonald's, right? Or something, I don't know, right? I mean, you get what I'm saying? Okay, so think about that. Nike, all that kind of stuff. And so we had this important time where being a consumer was taking on many much more developed dimensions. And I think this is where the contradiction is at. And I think we're the same today. Workers don't want to be exploited by the wealthy. Don't like, these terrible jobs. I mean, everybody hates on Walmart, and then everybody goes to Walmart, right? Okay? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't hate on them, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't go. I'm not saying that you should go. I'm just simply saying that I think that you can see that when it comes to the drive for consumerism and the way that we want all these things, but then we don't like how they're produced. Now we have all this labor sent to China, and all these things are sold for really, really cheap. Americans want everything to remain really, really cheap and very, very accessible, and they still want their jobs. And these are all the contradictions of the consumer. And at the same time, many of the wealthy want to give as little as possible to majority of workers, but then who's going to buy their stuff if people don't have money to spend? So capitalism has been seen by its critics as a system full of massive contradictions of interests. In any case, whether that's strictly the problem of capitalism, that's debatable. But what we can say is that is a problem that we see, especially in the time period that we're covering here. So I'm going to stop here, and we'll move on to the next section.